All right. So looks like everybody is able to hear me. So first of all, let me thank everybody for taking the time out and attending the webinar. I am Anmol Kumar. I am the senior AWS consultant for Excellence, and I am going to talk about a lot of stories today. So the agenda today is going to be pretty brief. So what I'm going to essentially planning to do today is to do a lot of storytelling and a bit of Q&A. So these stories are essentially going to revolve around a few risks which we keep seeing in cloud computing. So basically what has happened in past 2 years of our experience is we have seen a lot of deployments, we have helped a lot of deployments, and because of that experience, we have seen and identified a few very nice and interesting stories and situations which are somewhat fun and somewhat very interesting to listen. So that's what we're going to do today. Today, I don't even have any agenda of talking about any technology. To be very specific, in my entire slide deck, you will not even find a single slide which is talking about technology or explaining a technology. Rather, what we're going to do is to just talk about our experiences. Very nice and fun stories, which are going to revolve around a few risks which we have identified for cloud computing. So just quickly see those risks around which our stories are going to revolve. So the first risk which we are going to talk about is cost reduction and optimization. So cost reduction is not a risk, it is a feature of cloud computing. Optimization is also a feature of cloud computing, but there are certain risks which are included, which are predominant in this kind of utilities which we use over cloud. Now, the second would be agility and elasticity. Again, a very interesting and important functionality of cloud. Now, there are again certain risks involved in this. Of course, security. This is one of the greatest myths, that cloud is not secure. So we'll try to also see that whether that is actually a myth or not. And at the same time, if it is not a myth, then how could security be actually a risk for cloud computing? So that is also we are going to see. Rights management, because cloud is traditionally known to be controlled by one particular username and password, and that's what you share with people when you give them the console access, which is today not the right case, but still there are certain cases or certain cloud service provider which still follow the same old mechanisms of using or giving a single console access to their users, and as a result there could be certain limitations or risks with rights management in cloud. So we'll also talk about a few stories which are going to tackle or make you understand about the rights management. The next would be documentation. Now, this is one of my favorite bit. I will be talking about this in pretty detail, because in my past experience as a cloud consultant, I have seen that majority of the issues or problems our clients face are because they don't have a proper documentation or a proper flowchart of the entire infrastructure. Because it is on cloud, it becomes very ad hoc for people to just go and start creating servers and resources, and then they forget to actually make sure that they have a proper diagram of the entire infrastructure. So we will talk about this in pretty depth and see that how this could actually lead to certain other issues and problems. And then we are going to spend a lot of time on question and answer, talking with you and understanding that whether you have certain risks, you have certain issues or challenges with cloud or not, and I would try my level best to identify or find a solution for you, probably today, or probably we will take it down and come back to you with a proper solution. So that is what is going to be the total agenda. I will try to close all the stories within the next 30 to 40 minutes. After that, we'll spend about half an hour to 20 minutes taking questions from you and interacting with you. So let's begin. Just to give you a quick understanding, so the key benefits of cloud, my mouse stopped here. Cloud computing are, of course, cost optimization and reduction, agility and elasticity, security, and interestingly, where could cloud go wrong are again cost management, agility or elasticity, security. So based on those three particular topics, we are going to have a story. So the first story is about one of my friend. Now, we all know that cloud pricing is variable, right? Now, you pay what you use. So that is the standard and basic concept in cloud computing. But one of my friend who happens to be a Microsoft evangelist, to be very specific, he is regional Microsoft director. Now, these guys are not under Microsoft payroll. They are essentially like MVPs, but this is the highest credential Microsoft gives to their evangelists. So he is the North India .NET director, one of my old friend. I will not name him. So what happened recently was he was recommended by Microsoft to a very well-known company to go and talk about Azure and give a nice demo of it. So he went and he started doing that. So he created a nice demo. He created a bunch of machines. He went to the company. He showed the entire demo, did a nice explanation. Everybody was happy. Microsoft paid him money. The organization was appreciating his effort, and everything was absolutely fine. Now, what happened after that? By the end of the month, that guy had to spend about $100, not 100, sorry, I'm wrong, $500 for his Azure bill. And why did that happen? That happened because he just forgot to turn off his demo machines. So this could happen with anybody. This has happened to me as well. I create a test machine. I just forgot to shut it down. And by the end of the month, I realized that, oh, I have incurred a few dollars. So if it is a few machines, you can even keep forgetting it for a decent duration of time, and later on you realize that okay, you have spent probably some $200 in last 3 months just because one of your small instance was on and you didn't realize that. So this is a very very common mistake which we keep doing, and even great Microsoft evangelists also do the same mistake while doing Azure presentations. So this is also very common with anybody. This guy actually went back and talked with Microsoft and requested them to waive off the money because he was on a Microsoft funded or sponsored event and he was talking about Microsoft's product. So he thought that he can actually go back and bargain. But Microsoft refused. Why Microsoft refused? Because of a very, very straightforward reason that the guy has actually consumed that resource for that duration of time. Though the guy didn't use it for any purpose, he was actually occupying that resource for the entire duration. So Microsoft has provided him through Azure those resources to be used. Now, if he's using or not, is not Microsoft's fault. So this is at the end of the day our responsibility, the responsibility of the users to make sure that whatever we use or whatever we start, we are actually consuming it properly. Correct? So that is a very, very important thing. Now, how do we do that? The easiest or the simplest solution would be to monitor your resources. Now, you can use anything for monitoring the resources. You can use, if let's say you're using AWS, you can use something like CloudWatch, or you can just put a trigger on your billing statement that if your bill crosses a particular amount, then you get an email alert saying that okay, you have crossed $100 or $500 or a particular threshold which you have already configured. If you don't want to do that, you can deploy a third-party monitoring solution like let's say Nagios. So people who are familiar with Linux will know Nagios is one of the most well-known open source monitoring service and server monitoring application. I use it a lot and I recommend it a lot. It is a very nice application. So you can use it to make sure and to have a check that whether the servers are running or not. Now, I have seen people who have gone extremely wild and used things like Raspberry Pi, those little hardware boards like BeagleBoard and Arduino boards. So they have used those devices and controlled physical light bulbs to give them alerts that whether their AWS instances or Azure instances are on or not. So it's completely on your imagination that what you want to use. But the solution or the bottom line or the take home for this story is if you are using resources, you have to make sure that you are using it for a purpose or not. And then you have to make sure that when you are not using it, you properly kill it. You just don't suspend it or don't shut down it. If it is not required, you clean each and every resources included in it. So for example, let's say if you are creating a EC2 instance on Amazon, so if you just stop the machine, the storage is still sitting there and it is still occupying your resources. Now, if you terminate it, and if you terminate it properly, along with deleting the storage or along with releasing the IP addresses which you have configured with it, you are actually cleaning it well. So that's how you should be doing it. So this is the first story. If you want me to answer a question or repeat something, you are completely welcome to drop me a message on the chat window. So I can do that, or we can take all the questions at the end, which we will anyways be doing. So let's now quickly go to story number 2. This is again about cost management. So the story starts with the standard myth that if a cloud resource is not used, it will be cheaper or free. Now this is a very, very interesting one. Again, going back to one of my friend who is a system admin since past probably 10 or 15 years, and he is very good at what he does, but he don't have that much of experience or exposure with cloud. So around a year back, he came to me and he asked that, okay, I want to explore how the entire cloud computing stuff works, and I want to learn to use it. So what do I do? I knew that he is very good with Linux, he's very good with system admin, so he will learn it pretty quick. So I told him that, okay, you just go register on AWS and create a micro instance which is free for a complete year. You can also create a RDS instance. You can get an IP address, single elastic IP address attached with the machine, and keep using it without any problem, and you will not even get charged for it. So you can just play around, have fun, understand how to create, delete machines, how to use the APIs and all, and you don't even need to spend any money. All you will be charged is your credit card for verification, which is just $1 single. So he said that sounds pretty decent, so I will just go and do it. Just pardon me. So he did that. He created a Linux machine, a micro instance. He got one elastic IP attached with it. He installed probably Apache and a bunch of applications. He ran a small WordPress site on it for a few days. And then, to be extra cautious or extra safe, he turned the machine off happily and said that, okay, if this resource is supposed to be free while it is running, it should anyways be free while it is off, which is pretty obvious. So he turned the machine off and he forgot about it. By the end of the month, he realized that he has incurred about $2.50. Now, he was surprised, though the amount was hardly anything, it is just $2.50. But the question was, if this particular resource was supposed to be free while it was running, how could he incur that money? Now, that was a very, very interesting question. So he took the bill, he came to me and he asked that, hey, you told me that this is supposed to be free. How did I incur this money? Though this is this is nothing. This is just $2.50. But why? So I took the bill out and I started investigating that what exactly has happened. And then I realized that what he has done different was he has turned the machine off. Now what that would have led to? That would have led to one elastic IP which is now not associated with any instance. Now, interestingly, what Amazon says is if you have taken an elastic IP and attached with an instance, you are not going to get billed for it because you are already using it with an instance and Amazon is already billing you for the instance. So it is taken care of. So a micro instance which is free has an IP address, makes it free. But the moment you turn the machine off, the IP address gets deassociated. The moment it is disassociated, Amazon assumes that you are just occupying the resource and not using it. So just for occupying that resource, they start charging that elastic IP. And that's how he incurred the money. So this is very, very interesting. And there could be other many resources which are similar where you think that you are actually not getting built because you are not using it, but it is just sitting somewhere dormant and getting your bill increased by some or the other means. Sorry. So the fact is some cloud resources are charged even if you use it or not. So probably if you are using it, it might actually come to be cheaper or free, and if you are not using it, it might actually start incurring more money. So if you are thinking that you have got 70 I'm really sorry so if you have got some 70 different elastic IPs and you are thinking that they are just sitting there not doing anything and they are not getting you any billed amount, you might be actually wrong. And you are actually wrong in this case because these idle resources are actually getting billed for something or the other. Similarly, many a times what I have noticed that people keep creating machines and terminating machines and they don't realize that their machines are not configured in a way on Amazon, let's say, that when they terminate it, the disk gets deleted automatically. Now what happens later on is they keep deleting the machine, terminating the machine, the storage keeps remaining there, and by the end of few months they realize that okay, they have consumed probably some 7 terabytes of storage, and now they are incurring a decent amount of money just for that resource which is already supposed to be deleted. I'm sorry, I'll just take some water. Just give me a second. Yeah, sorry about that. So there could be many such examples where we think that we are not getting billed, but at the back end we are actually getting billed. So the bottom line here is read the fine prints. Or if you don't want to spend time on it, get an expert to do that for you. You take your bill, you run it through an expert, you run it through a cloud consultant, and get it validated properly that your bill is getting actually billed for the resources which you need. There is nothing hidden in that bill which you don't realize but is actually increasing your cost for the entire deployment. And this is actually very common. We will also go through a bunch of other stories and see that how this keeps happening for many of cloud adapters. So with this, I come to the end of story 2. Now let's quickly jump to story 3. Again, if you have any quick questions, you are free to drop it on chat. Okay, so now let's go to agility and documentation. So now why I have clubbed these two different aspects in one, because the story is in a way that it actually covers both the subjects. So we'll just try to quickly see that how agility and documentation can start saving you money or can start increasing your performance. So cloud makes it very easy to go wild with technology. Now this is a very, very interesting thing which we don't realize about cloud computing. Now creating a data warehousing solution has become so easy on, let's say, on Amazon, is you can just walk in, register, spend $1 for your credit card verification, and immediately go ahead and create a data warehousing solution on Amazon Redshift. You end up paying a few $100s and you have a data warehousing solution right there ready to be used for whatever kind of data you want to analyze within minutes. Whereas for getting a data warehousing solution in a traditional scenario, you would be spending probably a few $1 million. You would be deploying a data center, you would be deploying the entire architecture, getting some 500 guys to manage it, and then you will deploy your application on it. So it is an effort of months, if not years. But today you can just walk in, spend half an hour, and you can create a data warehousing solution just like that. Now, this is great. No doubt it is fantastic. It is phenomenal. But it has a problem. The problem is you don't even realize that what type of technology you are using to solve what type of a problem. So what has happened with us, so one of our customers rather, they had a very complex setup. So they were getting logs from their clients, which are like some 200 clients, sending their user logs to them. And these guys were taking these logs and analyzing it in real time. So they had huge amount of data coming in. So probably they were trying to churn about 2 to 3 million records every day. So it was a pretty decent amount of setups. They were doing the entire computing on Amazon. So they looked at the entire infrastructure. They said that okay, the best thing to capture those logs looks to be Amazon Kinesis, which is supposed to be a great application or a great resource provided by Amazon to take huge amount of input data. So you can take Twitter feeds, you can take feeds from any external body, you can take API feeds, and you can just pass it on Kinesis. Kinesis buffers that feed and then passes it to processing nodes or processing applications or processing clusters, depending on what kind of feed you are taking and what you want to do with it. So they decided that, okay, because we are getting a huge amount of data, we should be using Kinesis. Great, sounds fantastic. That is a standard a standard outcome which somebody would say by just listening to a problem. But if you actually sit and try to analyze, you might actually figure out that their requirement might not be what they were using. So they went ahead and started using Kinesis, but they were not even able to serve 20% of their customers at that point of time. Though Kinesis was a fantastic technology, they were using Kinesis, they were then pushing that data from Kinesis to Redshift, and so on and so forth. So, but at the end of the day, the performance was pretty bad, and they were incurring a decent amount of money for the entire setup. So they came to us They said that, hey, we are using best of the breed technology provided from Amazon. Still, we are getting bottlenecked somewhere or the other. What do we do? So we sat, we understood the entire architecture, and then we asked them to create a flowchart. We sat with them, we created a decent flowchart which talked about the entire data flow from the entry point to the database to the processing of the data and then going to the reporting. So we did that. And when we did that, we realized that the bottleneck is not where the data is coming in. Rather, the bottleneck is where the data was getting pushed from Kinesis to Redshift. Then what we did? Then we realized that if the bottleneck is not at Kinesis, then why do we use it? So we decided to remove Kinesis and start using S3 instead. So we started capturing all the data, all the log files from our customer, from the customer's customer, and put it on the S3 bucket. Now, interestingly, I don't know how many of you have actually used Amazon and actually use S3 in a pretty optimized way. That in S3, when you start saving files or when you start retrieving files from S3, there are two ways of doing it. One, the standard practice is when I save a log file on S3, my first few characters of the file will be same, the last will be different. Now, the moment we do that, we don't realize that in that case, S3 is going to process all those files starting with the same initials and ending with a different initial with a single thread. Now the trick here is you reverse it. You change the initial characters and let the remaining character be same or whatever you want. The moment you do that, the moment the initial character varies, they are actually handled by different threads. And the moment you do that, your S3 performance increases like anything. So the moment we started doing it, because these guys came back and said that we have tried using S3, but we are not getting the performance. The problem was because they were not following the S3 fine lines, they are not following the S3 optimization tips and using this mechanism of changing the first few characters of S3 files in the same bucket. Instead, they were just changing the last few characters of the file. And because of the reason, they were getting processed using a single thread. And the performance was absolutely bad. The moment they changed the practice, the performance increased manifold. Right? Programmatically doing this was a few minutes job. And the performance difference was tremendous. The moment they did that, they realized that the performance bottleneck was like managed up to a certain extent. Then we figured out that, okay, if we are trying to capture data from S3 to Redshift, there is a separate command called copy command which has been created on Redshift, which helps you again do the same thing. Read the data from S3 in a parallel manner. If you do standard queries on Redshift and try to fetch data from S3 to Redshift, then it is going to use the single write node for capturing the data on your Redshift cluster. But the moment you change it and you start using the copy command, it becomes parallel in nature and your performance again increases manifold. So by actually removing a much more advanced technology like Kinesis and putting back to a much older and tested technology like S3, we were able to increase the performance and at the same time save a lot of cost. How we did that? We did that because first, we were aware of the fine lines, we were aware of the optimization tips and tricks, and second, we documented the entire architecture in a well-planned manner. This is one of the very, very key things. In cloud, the biggest challenge for many of us is because it is very easy to deploy, we don't tend to document it before we deploy it. It is rather the other way around. We go ahead, we deploy something, we see everything is working, then if we feel, we go ahead and document it. And that's actually a very, very bad practice. If you are in the IT field since past few years or few decades, I'm sure you understand the importance of documentation. So before even going and deploying something on the cloud, let it be very easy. Still sit down, do your homework first, do the documentation, and then go ahead and create your infrastructure there. If you don't do this, then there could be many things which can happen. So by this, we come to the end of story 3 as well. I think we have already spent around 20 minutes. So I have around 10 more minutes to go through 2 other stories, which are pretty short, which are not that longish for that matter. So security and rights management. Now this is a very, very interesting one. We all assume, or we all have heard sometime or the other. I have heard from great guys that cloud is not secure or cloud is not safe. Uh, there are people who think that this is myth. I am also one of them who thinks that this is a myth, because the security actually depends on how you deploy it. It is as good as your data center, your private data center, or it is as good as any other hosted server you use or you have been using since past many years. So it is equally good, or rather, in certain cases, it is actually better. But then there are other things as well. So the first thing which we would like to point over here is not all cloud service providers are same. So there are cloud service providers like the top ones, like let's say Azure and Amazon and GCE, Google Cloud Compute Engine. So they are the top ones, of course, and they come with a lot of compliance. They have a lot of compliance. They make sure that your data is safe. They have redundancy. They have mostly tried to make sure that you are safe when you are trying to move there. But not all the cloud service providers are the same. So let's say I have spent a lot of time in India. So in India, there are certain particular vectors. Sorry, I'm sorry. There are certain verticals where it is mandatory that you cannot host the data outside the country, right? Now when you do that, you have to make sure that if you are trying to use cloud, you use a local vendor, you use a local service provider. Now because of that compulsion, many a times our customers have to use or have to select one of the cloud service providers which are not among those best tier or the top tier. And what happens then is there could be many such cases where this second tier or third tier cloud service providers, which I'm not going to name at this point, they don't actually comply with the best security practices or policies or compliances for that matter. I myself have seen certain cloud service providers, not of course not the top tier ones. They unlike Amazon or Azure or anything else, they don't rely on key-based authentication. They still have standard password-driven authentication. And to top it all, what they do is when they provision a machine, they do it manually, and then they give a standard password while creating those machines. So one of the service provider I was working with a few years back, I realized that whenever he creates a machine or he provides or provisions a machine for his customer, they provide password as password. Now this is pretty lame, and it is actually pretty lame. So when I get a server, it is of course my responsibility to immediately change the password before putting any important data on it. But then again, at the same time, it is equally bad of the service provider doing such kind of a thing. The moment I got to know that they are doing this, I just for the sake of testing, I tried to find out a bunch of IP address from their subnet. I did it in probably 5 minutes. After that, I tried pinging a few of them, tried connecting with a few of them with the standard default password, and I got into a bunch of them. I got into a bunch of those servers by using password as a password. So yes, the problem is partially of the admin who is managing those sites from the client's end because he didn't bother to change the password. But at the same time, the service provider also should make sure that whichever machines they are provisioning, they at least have unique passwords so that nobody who knows what is the standard password for that instance can just try logging into any random any random site or server. So that is one of the very, very interesting thing we noticed, and of course then there has to be a solution for it. So not all of them, not all of this second or third tier cloud service providers. One second. Okay, so again, all these second and third tier service providers are not providing all the compliances or the best practices. So what we do, whenever we have to select a cloud service provider which is not from the top tier, at least we should make sure that they have a certain set of compliances in place. So at least ISO 27001 or PCI DSS or things like that. So let's say if you are planning to host an e-com site on a cloud service provider, it is actually mandatory to make sure that they have PCI DSS in many countries. So, and then again, the ISO 27001 is something which you should look for. So if those cloud service providers are not providing or not complying with these compliances, then it is better to just avoid them as much as possible. And of course, if there is no guideline for your vertical, then you can certainly go ahead and select from the top tier cloud service provider at any point in time, because they are actually pretty secure and they have made sure that there are various things which has been taken care already by them to make sure that whenever you log in or whenever you acquire a resource, it is pretty much secure from the external, from the internet for that matter. Okay, so with this I come to the end of story 4 as well, and we are pretty much close to the end. Let's see. Okay, so the story 5 also revolves around security. Now this is a very, very interesting one. A client of ours, again, who runs a small WordPress website, 150 MB worth of website, hardly anything, they suddenly incurred about $700 worth of bandwidth consumption. Now that is pretty astonishing. One possibility could have been that, okay, they are actually getting a lot of hits, a lot of people are actually accessing their website, but going by their logs and their Google Analytics report, we figured out that, okay, that was not the case. But still they were incurring $700 worth of bandwidth. That would be somewhere around, if I am not wrong, 73 terabytes of data downloads. That's what has happened with those guys. So how could that happen, that a 150 MB site WordPress, which is not even seeing probably 1,000 hits a day, ended up spending that much of money on bandwidth? If it was on something else, we would have figured out, but it was plain straightforward bandwidth. So we again did the standard thing. We tried sitting with them, creating flowcharts, creating documents, and then going through their bills, going through their AWS reports and bills. So we took out the bill and we started analyzing. And interestingly, the bill didn't give us anything. Why the bill didn't give us anything? It was because the bill was just stating one small thing. The bill was stating that, okay, they have seen 73 terabytes of download. Now, how did that download happen? We didn't have any clue. So we actually had to log into those servers and started investigating on what the logs say. Now, when we start doing it, we realize that WordPress has a vulnerability. Now, that vulnerability lets a hacker to get into the site and start using this site as a botnet client. So what was happening was, though the site was not compromised, there were certain botnets which was attacking this site consistently. So it was just getting attacked by a huge botnet, and this particular website was happily giving response back to those attacking sites. So it was a plain, straightforward, distributed DOS attack. So didn't got compromised, only was getting hit by botnets at a consistent basis with millions and millions of hits every day. And what was happening was, the WordPress site was happily giving back the front page, the index page, back to them. And that, because the front page has huge images, or rather many images which were not optimized, it was ending up with $700 worth of bandwidth. So that was the most interesting bit. Now, what they would have done to save this kind of situation. Now, many times what happens is, there are startups. There are many startups who don't actually have a hardcore backend or a hardcore server engineer in place. What they do is, because cloud is easy, because the startup is run by a bunch of developers who are great in what they do, they just assume that they can go on, create a machine, and start deploying their code and start serving it to the world, which works in many cases. But then again, they don't realize that there are certain set of things which they should be doing to secure the server as well. So there are certain best practices which anybody should be doing to make sure that they are safe from this kind of attacks. Though the server was secure, though the machine didn't got compromised ever, still there was a problem, just because there was a DOS attack consistently running and nobody was monitoring that the DOS attack is happening. So what would have saved them? Now the most interesting bit here is, how could I make sure that I am out of such danger if I am not, let's say, server admin geek? So what do I do? One option, a straightforward, clear-cut option, is use the resources which the cloud service provider is using. So for instance, if these guys would have used, let's say, a load balancer in front of the server, though it was just one server they were running at that point of time, but still, if they would have used a load balancer, this problem wouldn't have happened, because the load balancer would have identified the DOS attack and dropped it at the load balancer level itself. So there wouldn't have been any other further implications to the DOS attack. That is first. So if somebody who is not very good with backend management or with customizing security applications, then it is good to at least go ahead and identify that what services the cloud service provider is providing and which is not very expensive, and I can just use to make sure that I am safe from this kind of attacks. Now, if I am a server wizard, I know how to handle server. What would I have done? I would have used something like fail to ban probably, which would just listen on attacks like where there is a single IP or there is a bunch of IPs doing the same activity at a repeated manner uh, consistently. So it would have identified that and stopped that IP for a certain period of time. So that's what we do. So whenever we provision a server, be it a web server or be it just a server doing some backend crunching, backend data crunching over SSH, we make sure that we install at least certain application which can figure out this kind of attacks. So if we go outside and see, I don't know how many of you have actually faced this and realized, but I have faced this in my past 2-3 years of experience pretty often. That if I have a public IP, I have hundreds and thousands of DOS attacks pinging on it every day. So there are botnets across the globe. They don't care. They don't care about what data you have. All they care about is they will just come, they will find a public IP address, they will hit on it, they will try to penetrate the machine, and if they can penetrate the machine, they will convert that machine again into a dormant botnet client or a zombie node for that matter. So their objective is just to grow their botnet so that if someday they have to start a war against, let's say there is a cyber warfare happening somewhere and they want to use this botnet against a country or against a company or against any entity, they can use it. So right now what they're trying to do is to just add zombie machines on the network. And if you have a public IP, they will be hitting it. I have a small Raspberry Pi sitting at my home which is essentially working as a remotely managed storage for me. I see at least a few thousand attacks every week on that small little device sitting at my home, which don't even have any data other than my photographs. So nobody cares about what data you have. It is just that they want to penetrate every IP address possible and want to get into it so that they can increase the size of their existing botnet. So that's how this entire thing is happening. So yeah, we need to make sure that the security is either completely outsourced to the cloud service provider so that we don't have to bother about it and it is taken care by the provider and by the resources the provider is providing, or we do it ourselves. We do it ourselves in a much more planned manner for that matter. So with this, I pretty much come to the end of the presentation, and now I will quickly shift to the Q&A. But before that, the take home or the bottom line for this particular story, and that is security is your responsibility. Nobody else is going to come and do the entire end-to-end security for you. The cloud service provider will provide you with a certain set of guidelines and compliances and resources which can help you figure out and manage security. But at the end of the day, if you have created a server on Amazon or Azure or GC for that matter, and you have explicitly allowed password-based authentication and have given a password like password, then nobody can help you. As simple as that. So with this, I now come to the end of the presentation and go to the go to the Q&A. If you have any questions right now, you are most welcome to ask and we'll try to answer them right away. If not, then we'll certainly come back to you later on. Here are the email addresses and credentials of ours. So if you have any questions later on also, you can either drop me a mail on info@excellence.com or you can write to one of my colleague, Mr. Arun. He is also here right now, so he will be taking care of all your business related queries if you have. So yeah, please go on. Any questions?
Hi. Nice to hear. Good
Okay,
session.
just give me a second. I think I am not able to hear. Sam is trying to say something. Just give me a moment. I am trying to see if my speaker is working well. One second. Yeah, sorry, Sam. Can you please repeat?
Yeah. Thanks for giving nice session. and I have the three questions.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Coming to the resource, Amazon has not taking for is not taking any charges for the resource, right? They are only considering on storage only, right? Like TVS, MySQL.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Can you please repeat? Your voice is slightly low.
Let me.
How should I ask?
Is this okay? No.
Yeah. Now this is better, much better. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming to the resource,
Mhm.
as you mentioned that resources are they are costing Amazon has costing more money, right? So I know that they are costing more money for the storage wise compared to the resource, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what basis they are taking money for resource? Can you explain about that?
I still didn't get you properly. Which resource you are talking about? So yeah, I understand that storage is something which is getting charged, and that's fine. But which other resource you are comparing it with?
Like its instance
Yeah.
and IPs
Right.
like that. I am saying. Yeah.
Mhm.
And for the PHP applications also, they are not
Mhm.
costing, right?
Yeah, applications
So
they anyways don't cost anything. But for the instances, yes, they of course do. That is based on
yeah.
hourly data rates. But the storage
Okay.
is essentially charged in a monthly manner. So you can have an instance running for 40 hours in 1 month and you will only get charged for those 40 hours. But if you are consuming, let's say, 1 terabyte of storage for 1 day in the entire month, by the end of the month, you will end up paying for that 1 terabyte because that is the maximum amount of resource you have used for that month. So that's how the instance and the storage cost varies.
So if I take one time attempt also, they are taking costing for the 1 month. 1 month
Exactly.
charges they are costing.
Correct.
Yeah, I got it. So
Correct.
coming to the another question, like password has a service. Password has a password. Yeah.
Okay.
In that, coming to the security measures, are we can use single sign in password in the replace of password has a password?
For cloud services or for the cloud console?
Cloud services.
No, right now I haven't seen any provider doing that. So if you want to do any kind of single sign-on, then you have to do it from your end. So you can have a SSH sharing mechanism inbuilt for yourself, which you can use for sharing the SSH keys, and probably you can use the same set of keys for all your machines and use the same key to log into them. So basically, you create your own custom AMI with a particular SSH key, which is shared across all the machines.
Okay.
So that's how you can manage it. But none of the cloud service provider does it for you as of yet.
Okay, great. And for console, we can't able to do it on single, right? Single
console, you just have one username and password, or certainly you can create keys and IAM roles for Amazon.
Yeah. Thanks. And coming to the WordPress attacks. And coming to the you said right, WordPress attacks.
Sorry?
Yeah. WordPress attacks, lost vulnerability, attacks. So for the each site, we can give the limitations, right? Attacks limitation. Is this any possible?
Which kind of limitation? Port level, application level?
Port level.
Yes, absolutely.
IP.
You can
give it, right?
For every instance, that which IPs
Yeah.
are allowed to access which ports. That you can certainly do for all the service providers, be it Amazon, be it Azure, be it GCE. They all support this functionality of mentioning that which IPs can access which ports for which machine.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thanks.
Most welcome. Any other questions, sir? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain on data corruption S3? You said copying from Redshift to something you said, right? I did not get you. Can you explain on S3? S3 logs, how we can grab?
Data corruption on S3, I haven't faced this ever myself, so I am not sure if that actually happens or not, because S3 is one of the most robust service provided by Amazon ever. I can still agree with if you say that okay, you have a EBS volume where you got some corruption in data, but with S3 it is pretty difficult to digest that. So saying that, what I was trying to say was slightly different. I was saying that there are certain optimization tricks and tips which are there in the fine prints of the documents of every resource, which we generally don't go through. So for instance, if you use Redshift, now what is Redshift? With Redshift, you create a database cluster out of the box, which you can use for data warehousing. Right. Now, when you do that, let's say using PostgreSQL, which is one of the offering Redshift provides, if you use the standard queries like updates and inserts, then what is going to happen is if you are reading a data from S3 and putting it back to Redshift using updates and inserts, it is going to use the standard way of writing, where the data is actually going to get written by one server, which is the master server. Traditionally, that's how this works, that you have one master server which does all the updates and all the inserts, and then there are slaves which just replicates the data and helps in selecting the data or helping you while you are doing select queries. Now, when you do that in a traditional manner, Redshift also works the same way. But what Amazon has done is they have created or they have optimized a command called copy. Now, if you use copy command for fetching data from S3 to Redshift, it actually works on all the nodes. So if you have a 7-node cluster or a 15-node cluster of Postgres on Redshift, all those nodes will be actually bringing the data parallelly from S3 and putting it into your data warehouse. So your performance increases manifold. So just by enabling or starting to use Redshift doesn't help, right? You actually have to go ahead and optimize and start using those tools which Amazon has provided to make sure that your performance is at par or is the best. So that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, thanks. Okay,
great.
I got it.
Any other questions, sir?
Nice session has been given. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. I really appreciate your time as well. Okay, any other questions from anybody? If not, then we'll probably end 10 minutes early. I think we are pretty good. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your time and patience. I hope you liked it. Please go ahead and drop us a mail with your feedback. Tell us whether you liked it, you don't like it, you want more such events or not. We'll be happy to answer and respond. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day ahead. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.